I don't know what we can talk about in this nation without talking about white superiority, honestly.
Who defines the meaning of God also defines the relationship between economy and God.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community?
You know what? You didn't hear nothing I said because I had my microphone muted. Welcome, everybody. How's everyone doing? I hope everybody's feeling good, today in this pandemic. I hope everyone is staying safe. Peace to everybody in the chat. It's like there's a couple people that you guys are always the first people in the chat. That's what's up. So just a couple of little housekeeping things before we bring on Dr. Rashidi. I tell you, we love Dr. Rashidi. So one thing that we wanted to just kind of talk about is that we finally hit that 10K mark over the weekend, and we had a huge, blowout online. You can still go to YouTube and see it. And there was a lot of gifts that were given out, and so we're going to announce all the winners tomorrow. Most of them have been, we've made contact with, but we just want to kind of make sure we talk to everybody, before we, put everyone's name out there. But yeah, so really excited, about reaching 10K. So now next is 100K. So we want to just thank you guys just for the support. It means a lot that you guys are subscribing to us and that you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Like all of those things are very, very important. The next thing, we also, this weekend, we had a screening, which was really super cool. In the panel discussion that follows the screening, we had Dr. Boyce Watkins, we had Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, which was it was fire. We had Jabari Ozazi, and we had Infudishi, and we also had Professor James Small, my man. So it was a really dynamic panel discussion, if you want to say that. It was really, really good. So which leads me to my next thing. It's very important that that you guys, if you haven't seen the film, and some of you guys don't know, we actually have a documentary. It's called HAPI, The Role of Economics in the Development of Civilization. It's like a whole 2-hour and 11-minute film. And if you haven't seen it yet, just go to hapifilm.com and get your tickets. We have another screening that we're going to do. It's actually going to be on the first day of Kwanzaa, which is super important because the first day of Kwanzaa is about unity, umoja. And so what better way is to spend it with us? And trust me, that panel discussion is going to be lit. So if I were you, I'll get my tickets now. That way we're going to be sending out little emails and little special things all throughout the process up until the day of. So it's really important to get your tickets now. That way you are you're in the know. And so you can go to hapifilm.com, and I'll put that up there on the screen for everybody for our next screening, which is December 26th. Can you believe it's already going to be December in a minute? So yes, I'm just making sure I have everything. Now, for some of you, you may not want to wait till December 26th, and I ain't mad at you. But what you can do, you can also go to hapifilm.com and you can get a DVD. We get the DVD right out to you. And while you're there, we have new merchandise, which is straight fire. We have Nubia merchandise. I'm just saying, just go to hapifilm.com, hit that little merchandise button. You can check out all the stuff that we have. We also have our HAPI t-shirts, which are really nice. Check that out too. It's time for Kwanzaa. You got to get Kwanzaa gifts. And what better way to give a Kwanzaa gift than give a HAPI gift? So December 26th, make sure you guys go in there. But if you can't wait, you just want to get a DVD, you can go to hapifilm.com and get the DVD. Or you can just go to our Vimeo link, which is right down at the bottom of the screen, and you can get a digital download, which also gives you the right to stream it. You can stream it as well. So either way, you got 3 ways to watch this film, but it's really powerful to come to the screening, because after you see the screening, then it's really cool. You're in you're in this webinar with a bunch of the HAPI cast members, and all types of stuff, happens. And so it was really super powerful on this past Saturday. So please, just make sure you guys check it out. So if you haven't subscribed to all of our channels, just subscribe to all of our channels. That'll be super cool. We love that. So that we can get up to that little 100K mark. We have super chat now. I feel like we're like the last people to get super chat. It's in our, if you go to YouTube, if you want to contribute, that's cool too. But other than that, that's it. And without, like this man right here, he doesn't really need an introduction. I feel like I should give him an introduction, but he's been on the show 3 times. So this is his 3rd time coming. And so I'm really excited to introduce Dr. Runoko Rashidi. And he has a seminar coming up at the end of this month. Hello.
Hello.
We get all the information about that. How you doing, Dr. Rashidi?
I'm good, sister. How about yourself? You seem like you're in a good mood.
I am, because I'm sitting down with you. All week I've been on my Facebook. I'm like, I get to sit down with Dr. Runoko Rashidi. It's like these things make me excited. Yeah, because I've been coming to your webinars every month. And so, they're really powerful. And this month I'm really excited because I'm gonna have a couple kids up in there. So this is a good one.
Well, only the best people come to my webinars. So that's why you're there all the time, you see. And tonight will be kind of a trailer. I started to say a dress rehearsal, but that wouldn't be the right word, but an introduction, a kind of preview. There you go.
Yes.
Of what I'm going to talk about. And that is the African presence in Asia. So I'm delighted to be back on the show. I'm delighted at the success that the HAPI movement is having. Congratulations on the YouTube. And I just, I'm in love. You all are wonderful, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
We're so happy you're part of the HAPI team. We're really glad you're around. So you already said the African presence in Asia. And for everybody, if you don't know, you just go to drrunoko.com, and let me put that up, and get your ticket, because it's really important. And it's this weekend. It's the 27th, and it's let me tell you, like what we're getting ready to do now, this is literally just like a teaser. Yes. He goes in during this thing. It's a 2-day event. So it's like an hour and a half each day. And so it's Friday night for an hour and a half, and then an hour and a half in the morning. And it's really cool because I see a lot of you guys that's in our chat. I see you guys in the webinar series. So you guys can all chime in and comment on how dope this is. But just go to drrunoko.com and get your tickets. All right.
Or you can even, if you can't do that, just go to Eventbrite and type in Runoko. So there's a lot of ways we can do this thing, but it's going to be a very exciting piece. And like all my presentations, I call it a visual masterpiece. Now tonight, God willing, and the creek don't rise, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I'm going to show you a few photographs. But this weekend, I plan to show about 400. So that's a lot. And we'll have a chance to have a discussion. So, a lot of people be talking about Runoko. We barely know about Africa. We barely know about U.S. history. What are you talking about when you talk about the African presence in Asia? Well, the way I was raised up, and I was influenced through the work of this man named Chancellor Williams, Destruction of Black Civilization. That book for me became what for some people would be a Bible or a Quran. I actually memorized whole passages of it. It was a blueprint to me for African historians, what we ought to do and the framework we ought to utilize. And the sad thing about it is that book was originally published in 1971, a long time ago, and I still use it. Sometimes people say, Dr. Rashidi, if you could just tell me one book that I ought to study, that would be the book. We talk about people like Ivan Van Sertima, but that book that came before Columbus, that book came out in the mid-1970s. And Dr. Ben's most important books, Black Man of the Nile, African Origin, A Major Western Religion, all those books came out in the 1970s. Sheikh Anta Diop's book, African Origin and Civilization, Myth or Reality, was published in the United States in 1974. So this was kind of a golden age in terms of African-centered historiography, an effort to reclaim that other Africa, not the African jungle that we see on TV, but the African continent that gave humanity and civilization to the world. So I read that book and I was lit. I knew when I was only 18 that I was going to be a historian, that I was going to find out, I was going to follow in Chancellor Williams' footsteps. Now, here's the first historian that I ever read, and I'm in the university now, Southern California, who said that not only did African people have a history before slavery, a great history, that we built the pyramids, but that we traveled all over the world before shackles and chains were placed on our hands and our feet. And I said, what? That is what is called an epiphany, a life-changing moment. And I wanted to find out what happened to those sisters and brothers, and I've been looking for them ever since. Unfortunately, it's a lonely field, and not many people are in it. Many people, as I say, we don't even know the full history of Africa or African-American history, but I wanted to look at the totality of the global African experience because we are a global people. We're not a minority, we're a majority. Humanity began with us, and Asia was the first place those Africans went to when they left the motherland.
Okay, wait. Unpack just that. So what do you mean when you're talking about the African presence in Asia? Like, what is that? Like, what are you defining as that?
Black people. You see, it's hard for me to make a distinction between African and Black. To me, when I use the word Black, I'm using it a descriptive term for the people of Africa and her children. And so the African presence in Asia would consist of a number of movements of our people. First, as the first people of Asia, we use the word, and I think we overuse it, indigenous and aboriginal. I think what we really mean are the first settlers, the first people to go there, because Africa is the only indigenous continent that humanity can be traced to. Africa is the parent continent, not Asia, not the Americas, not Europe, not Australia. Africa is where it all started. And then those Africans went out to people the rest of the world, and those movements continued. So we're talking about Black folk in Asia as the first people, the African presence in Asia represents the first populations to move out of Africa. And then we're looking at the role of African people, including in Sumer, I know that's going to come up, in classical Asian civilizations. We're not just talking about being there first, we're talking about what we did. And then we need to talk about the oppression of Black people, of African people in Asia. The history of Black folk in Asia is very similar to the Americas as the first people, the people who impacted classical American civilization like the Olmec, and then many, many, many African people captured and enslaved and taken away from Africa against their will. Asia has the same phenomenon. In fact, we could say that that's almost a global experience. So to me, it's very exciting.
Yeah. So what? Okay, so when you knew you were going to be a historian at age 18, what led you to Asia? Like, how did you get there?
Well, in the book, I happen to have Destruction of Black Civilization next to me by chance. Isn't that what a coincidence? So I want to go into that, but also nobody had done it. See, I not only wanted to record history, but I've always wanted to make history. And I know that I'm a real pioneer in the African presence in Asia. I've done more work on the subject. I know this may sound arrogant, but it is what it is. More work on the subject than anybody else. So I wanted to do something that nobody was doing before. I remember in 1987, where you had the big Aztec conference in Egypt. In fact, it was in Aswan. And a lot of my sisters and brothers, my colleagues, were going to Egypt. I went to India. I was always interested in doing something a little bit off the beaten path. So the desire to kind of be a pioneer and make history and chart unknown waters, all those things drove me.
I'm glad that I think this has been a little modest because you talk about, oh, I've done this, oh, I kind of did this, I kind of did that. But not only did you do these things, but you wrote books. How many books have you written, Dr. Rashidi?
I've written or edited 22. Working on a couple more.
Yes. And I tell you that number, every time I sit down and talk with somebody, I was like, well, haven't you done 22 books? And they're like, no. And I kept thinking, I was like, where did I get 22 from? It's because I got it from you. You've written and edited 22 books.
Well, yeah, I have. To me, it's like we all have a gift. The ancestors give us all a talent, a gift. Now, all of us don't follow up on that. So in many ways, I don't think I'm particularly extraordinary. I'm just doing what the ancestors wanted me to do. All of us have a gift, and some manifest it more than others. I'll tell you something else that I thrive on. I genuinely like what I do. A lot of us do things, we do it for our people. I don't know if Harriet Tubman enjoyed going back down in the South, getting those people off those plantations, but she did it. But I happen to like what I do. Yeah. And at the same time, feel like, hey, I'm doing something for my people. I'm uplifting Black people. I'm injecting knowledge of self. So when you have up that together, you like what you do. You think it's important from a moral perspective. And then you're able to generate enough income to continue to do it. Well, hey, you found bliss. How much more could you ask for in life? So every day I wake up feeling blessed. And I've done a lot. But at this stage in my life, more than anything, I'm interested in how am I going to pass this along? I'm getting up in years. I'm an elder now. So what are the things that I must do to ensure that future generations have my thousands and thousands of books, hundreds of DVDs and audio tapes, artifacts from all over the world, maybe 1 million original photographs, 1 million. Wow. So what do we do with that? It's very important that we move on that. My biological family is not terribly interested. So how do I see fit? How do I see it? How do I ensure that other generations of African people that I know can benefit from my work, how do they access it? What are the steps that I must take in order to do that? That's something that we really need to talk about more. When a scholar dies, an activist passes away, and their work is scattered to the far corners of the earth, that's a sin. That's a crime against humanity, because that means that each generation has to start all over again. And we can't afford that.
Absolutely. It's interesting you were talking about spirit, and you said you just listen to spirit. But, you listened to spirit when you were 18. How were you able to do that? You know what I'm saying? How were you able to, one, even know that spirit was talking to you? And then the next step to even do it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I'm sure that I wouldn't have called it spirit at that time. I would not have identified it as such. But it was as though I knew I had found my calling. That, I could memorize dates and facts. I was very good at geography. I was kind of nerdy anyway, so I liked to read and study. I was very shy. I was very bashful, so I was used to spending time by myself. And so it was almost like I was meant to be a historian. And I have the attitude that once you begin to, here it is, and I know you can relate to this. Once you get a bit of knowledge, you can't keep it. You have to share that.
Yeah.
And so once I began to be exposed to this information, I couldn't put the toothpaste back in the tube. So here's the man, Chancellor Williams, talking about Black people in China. He said there were so many Black people in India that Hitler would turn over in his grave, because Hitler was always talking about the Aryans, and the Aryans are associated with India. He talked about Black people building the kingdoms like the Khmers in Southeast Asia. So it was really, really remarkable. And that really it changed my life. And, you think about that too, because when you get frustrated and lonely and mad at us sometimes, and I think all of us do, you realize that maybe if you just reach one person and it's the right person, then you've done your duty. then the ancestors can be satisfied because you've reached out and you've passed it along so that another generation can make a run for it.
Yeah. You know, my friend teacher, Charlie Garima from Howard, you know, he did saying, one of the things he used to always say in class was that, you know, a lot of times you're on your bus of information and you stop and you try to, you know, get your people to get on, and not everybody's ready to get on at that point. But he was like, but it doesn't mean that you just leave them there. You drive a little bit more and you might have to come back around and pick them up. So he was never leave a Black person out, like, ever. You know, he was really, you know, he's just like, sometimes we're just not ready to receive it. But when we are, we get on that bus and we rock it. So, you know, I'm definitely on your bus right now, Dr. Rashidi.
All right, sister. I appreciate that.
All right.
You want to see if we can see some photographs?
Yeah. So we can get
let me see if we can do this.
Yep.
All right. We're going to share screen. And let's see here.
There we go.
Oh, I don't see any images. I've only done this streamline a couple of times. Do you see anything?
Yeah, I do see your images. I see your desktop.
No, that's not what we want to do.
If you pull up yours, okay, it went away. It was this there. So see, family is so important. This just follow the spirit. Follow the spirit. Follow the spirit. That's what's up.
I think we have it here. All right. Wonderful.
Oh. Yep.
I tell you, if not for this pandemic, I never would have heard of StreamYard. I still like to say Streamline. So it's been challenging, but the potential is just unlimited. I'm telling you. Yeah. This brother right here, this is a descendant. I'm only going to show a few photographs and we can return to our discussion. This brother is a representative of the first people, you heard me, to leave Africa and go into Asia, maybe 100,000 years ago. And you have these Black folk, they tend to be dark. You can see this brother is heavily melanated. And they tend to live in isolated areas, on islands or in dense rainforests or something like that. They tend to be persecuted, and they exist in only small numbers. This brother is from a community called the Jarawa, Jarawa, and they live on the Andaman Islands in the Bay of Bengal in the Indian Ocean. And these are the descendants, the children, if you were, of the first people to leave Africa and go into Asia. All right.
Oh, wow.
Now, my good brother Taki, and we can talk about it all you like, has asked me about the Sumerians and the relationship between the Sumerians and the Khmites. Now, Chancellor Williams, who I already talked about,
yes,
in his book, Destruction of Black Civilization, has this passage at the very beginning. He says, "What became of the Black people of Sumer?" The traveler asked the old man. "For ancient records show that the people of Sumer were Black. What happened to them?" "Ah," the old man sighed. "They lost their history, so they died." And that's a Sumer legend. Now, what you're looking at right now is a large room in the Musée du Louvre in Paris, the big National Museum of France. And trust me, they've got a lot of loot. And the French colonized what is now, or at least they were dominant figures, in what is now Iraq. And it was in Iraq that the civilization, what we now call Iraq, that the civilization called Sumer developed. Sumer is important to us because it is the parent civilization of Southwest Asia. It's not as old as Kemet, but it's old. And then you have this room here with a figure in the center on a pedestal called Gudea. Sheikh Anta Diop in his book, African Origin and Civilization, Myth or Reality, used this figure to show what he considered an African presence in ancient Sumer. The Sumerians call themselves the black-headed people. But the reason I use this photograph is because if you look at all the other statues, they are headless with one exception. Why would that be? Now, when I first started looking at these, I figured that somebody had pilfered them, knocked them off, sold them to a private dealer, or they were in a museum somewhere, and some of them probably are. But on my last trip to Southeast Asia, I was with these folk in Vietnam and Cambodia. And they told me something very interesting. They said that when those civilizations, and I'll talk about it this weekend with photographs, when those civilizations were overrun, those black civilizations in ancient Thailand and Cambodia and Vietnam, when they were overrun, they knocked the heads off their deities, of the statues, and took them with them. And that is what happened here, because the Sumerians would eventually fall to the same type of people like the Hyksos who invaded Kemet. So this is an important piece, and I've never shown it until today. See, you've inspired me.
Wow.
Now we're going to move east. Sumer comes to us about 4,000 years ago, but you have an African presence also in other parts of Western Asia. We'll move quickly from west to east. And sorry about that. And we're still in Southwest Asia. And this figure right here is Antara ibn Shaddad. He is called Antara the Lion. And he is a father of chivalry, a dashing knight and poet. His mother was an Ethiopian. She was an African. And his father was an Arab. And I took this photograph in the Medina in Damascus, Syria, my only trip to Syria in 2004, 2005. So now we are in West Asia. This man is important to us because he's considered to be a dashing knight and poet. He led troops into battle, and yet he wrote 4 love poems to his wife. He's considered like the father of chivalry. He is kind of like King Arthur or Richard the Lionheart in European mythology, but this brother was real. And he is the most important figure in pre-Islamic Arabia. And even stories even now I'm told by the Bedouin in the campfires of the Arabian Peninsula. So this is a black man from the Arabian Peninsula. And then here was the third of my books on the subject. I think, written or edited 6 books on the African presence in Asia. And this is the biggest one. This one is 400 pages. Wow. I have another one that's 398 pages, but this is the biggest one. But this one is particularly important because it was co-edited with the great Dr. Ivan van Sertima.
Oh, wow.
It was published way back in 1995. It has articles on the African roots of martial arts. It has essays by my brothers James Brunson and Wayne Chandler, Charles Finch. It's a bad book, and it's one of the books I'm most proud of. And then this is the current edition of that. This is my own book, which you have a copy of, I'm happy to say.
Yep.
Start
autograph.
The Black presence in the East. And this is an image on the cover of an Ethiopian soldier in the Persian army fighting the Greeks. And he's got a battle axe. And then, just to show the listeners and the viewers some of my work, this is one of my editions in French. This is a French language edition, 100,000-year history of the African presence in Asia. So it's good to be able to know that I'm having an impact with Francophone Africans too.
Oh, I love the picture.
Now, this is an interesting photograph. In fact, let me get hydrated here. I can tell the story. These are Judeans. One of the questions that Brother Taki posed to me was, who are the Israelites, or where do the Israelites come from? Well, we could talk about that and use this as a prototype. This is a depiction. This is what I call reliefs from an Assyrian palace in the 7th century. And these are captives from a place called Lachish in what is Judea, which would have been a part of Israel. And this, to my knowledge, is the first known depiction of people in that region look at that happy to be nappy hair.
Yes.
This is in the British Museum, that good hair.
Yeah, it looks like my hair.
Yeah, like your hair.
Yes.
In fact, today, you might even call those Bantu knots. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But this is
weird. Everything.
Yeah, that's it. Here's an interesting one. This is from a book published around 1950 by a European named Carlton S. Kuhn. Yes, Kuhn was his name. And And he was a real racist. Even Sheikh Anta Diop called him out. But he has a series of books, including one called The Origins, I see either The Origins of Races or The Origins of Race, one of the two. It was published in 1950. And I was living in San Antonio a few years ago. And one of the things about San Antonio is they have these excellent used bookstores. So I bought this hardback book for about $3. And it had a lot of photographs in there. Now, these photographs, I put two of them together, is what Kuhn, this preeminent European anthropologist, considered to be the examples of the first people of the Arabian Peninsula. And you have two examples of Black men. One here who's more like the Batwa, the diminutive African people, so-called Pygmies in Central Africa. These, just like the brother I showed at the beginning, the Jarawa, very similar ancient Black populations. The first people in the world, first modern humans, were short-statured Black people. And they went all over the world tens of thousands of years ago. But following that group of Black folk, you have another group of Black people with naturally straight to wavy hair. And you see them in southern India and in eastern India as well. But mostly you see them in Australia. If you didn't know better, a person might look at this and say, that's an indigenous Australian, so-called Aboriginal Australia. And these are ancient Black populations in Southwest Arabia. Arabia, just across the Red Sea from Africa, is where we begin Asia, geographically. All right, a few more.
I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So what made the first, Africans just decide to go to Asia? I mean, it wasn't Asia at the time, but what made them want to explore that part of the world?
Who knows? Could have been a natural desire for just to see what lay on the other side of the hill. Could have been overpopulation. Might have been a family squabble where you had to raise up. There might have been a drought. It could have been any of a number of factors. And the thing about it is, there wasn't just one migration. There were probably ongoing migrations. So you ask the key question, what drove them, what moved them? But there's no real precise answer for that.
Okay.
Now, look at this brother. Where do you think he's from? 20 years ago, I would have said Harlem, but now I can't honestly say that. But from some Black neighborhood, some Black community, somewhere in the world. This brother is from India.
Absolutely.
And these are the ancient people of India. And this photograph, along with a series of black and whites, really began my photographic collection. I have a lot of them now. But I was a student at UCLA back in the 1970s. I was taking extension courses. And I would go, because I had a full-time job, to the UCLA library on Saturdays. And I found myself studying anthropology and archaeology, and I found myself going through all these old books. And I found a book called The Tribes and Castes of the Southern Provinces of India. It was several volumes published in either 1907 or 1909. And this photograph was in there, and it was so old that it literally fell out of the book. And I said, oh my goodness. And I helped a few more of them fall out of these books, called it reparations. And that was my first, collection of photos. Look at this brother right here.
I know. It looks good.
Yeah, it's a brother.
Wow.
So we're going to talk a lot about that. There are more Black people in India than in Nigeria. Wow. And here I am with one of them. You see, so I started traveling to India. India was my first really big trip in 1987. Well, I'd been to Mexico. I'd been to Brazil. But in 1987, I put on my traveling shoes and I went all the way to India, just me and this other sister. And it was like a new world. I've been to 125 countries now. India is the only place I've ever been to where I felt like I had entered into another world. And that happened to me on 3 occasions. So this is my 1999 trip. And this at the time was the blackest person I had ever seen in my life. I could not take my eyes off this brother. I stared at him for a solid 15 minutes. Now he was staring at me too. I don't know what he was thinking about, but I'm saying, damn, that brother is black. And I wish I looked like that. And there's a lot of black folk in it.
Wow.
So we're going to talk about that this weekend. And we're going to talk about this devilish thing called the caste system and untouchability. We're going to talk about the status of women in India. We're going to talk about the Dalits. Let me wind down. This one takes us to China. This is from the Yuan dynasty in China. You can identify Black folk in at least 4 historical periods: in the Shang dynasty, in the Tang dynasty, in the Yuan dynasty or the Mongol dynasty, and the Ming dynasty. And the Ming dynasty is interesting because this is where you have the appearance of the man named Bodhidharma, who is credited with introducing martial arts from India to the Far East.
Okay, wait. Can you give us some dates on those 4 periods?
Yeah, very good. The Shang dynasty is from around 1700 BC. That would correspond with the 12th dynasty of Kemet.
Okay.
So it begins around 1700 BCE, and it goes until about 1000 BC.
Okay.
It lasts several hundred years. It's the parent dynasty of China, the Shang. And then the Tang dynasty is more like, I think, about 300, or really it's more like about 700 years in the Common Era.
Okay.
So let's say roughly 1300 years ago, you have the height of the Tang dynasty. And then the Yuan dynasty, Y-U-A-N, is from around 1400 CE to about 1550. It doesn't last very long. It's dominated by Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan. And the Ming dynasty takes us to about 1600, about 400 years ago. All right. So this is no doubt a Black man. This is in the Asian Art Museum of San Francisco. And then we wind it up with just a couple more. We don't want to give the whole show away. I don't want to be lonely this weekend. These 2 images take us to Southeast Asia. This is one of my favorite images of the Buddha from Thailand. The farther back you go, the greater the chance that God is going to be portrayed as a Black man. And if you go a little farther, a Black woman. And this is an image of the Buddha. And this one is in Thailand. I'm going to go back to Southeast Asia, hopefully next year, take some more pictures. And this is in Vietnam. Hey, look at this one right here. Image of the Buddha from Vietnam 1,000 years ago. And this is in the Musée Guimet in Paris. Let's see if I have any more. One last one.
Ooh.
This is a suit of armor of a shogun from Japan in the 14th century, from the Ashikaga shogunate. Shoguns were the military rulers of Japan. A suit of armor. And on the chest plate of the baddest representative, the biggest badass from that dynasty in Japan, is a black-skinned warrior, the patron of the samurai. His name is Fudomayo. That name means the immovable. And Fudomayo is one of the 5 wisdom kings in Japanese mythology. And you see him as a Black man or a Black figure with happy-to-be-nappy hair and an upraised sword about to do damage. This is the patron of the samurai. You have 2 proverbs that have been used to suggest a Black presence in Japan. One goes, for a samurai to be brave, he must have a bit of Black blood. And the other one says, to make a good samurai, half the blood in one's veins must be Black. What does that mean? You have the tradition that the first shogun, the first military ruler of Japan, was a Black man named Sakanoi Tomomaru, who led the armies of Japan in the 7th century against the Ainu. So all of these things are just drops in the bucket in terms of the global African experience. And in this case, the African presence in Asia. Last month, we did Europe. The month before that, we looked at the African presence in ancient America. Next month, I'm going to do the Black presence in Australia and the Pacific because we want a global overview. And I'm really, 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 really grateful to HAPI Talks, to you and Brother Taki for allowing me to come on and share a little bit of it.
No, like this. Oh, you know what? I'm almost mad. You have to stop. Wait, why do you have to stop? Okay, I know you have to stop. I know you.
Wow.
Listen, everybody, get your tickets.
I was finished.
Everyone, get your tickets for this. I mean, this is a teaser. This is just like a little tiny piece. You guys have got to get your tickets for this weekend. It's Friday, Friday the 27th at 8 to 9:30. That's like for an hour and a half. And then we come back the next morning from 11 to 12:30 for an hour and a half. And you said he has 400 pictures. Listen, the price point that you're selling this at, you're just like giving it away. Like, hey, just come on. It's very economical. It's $28, and just buy your ticket, sit your family down and watch, and definitely be part of this webinar. And the other cool thing is that, I don't know if you guys know this, and if you don't follow Dr. Rashidi on Facebook, you're missing out, because he puts a lot of like pictures up all throughout the day to keep you motivated. You can be sitting at your job and feeling some type of way. You just go onto his Facebook page. He has beautiful pictures, and he always does a lot of nice, beautiful pictures of women, which I really appreciate. Yeah. Yes, I really appreciate that. But the other thing is that you have a Patreon. It's a Patreon account. You guys go just sign up. That way you get all this stuff in your inbox like every day. Wow. Oh God, this is gonna be good. So now, okay, wait. I got questions, but I got to figure out where we need to get started. Okay, so all right. So let's start with just the role of African people in classical Asian civilization. Let's start there.
We've gone over a few of them. You have Sumer. And Sumer eventually gives way to Babylon, Assyria, and Persia. Sumer is one of these what are called parent civilizations. The HAPI civilization is a parent civilization. The Olmec civilization is a parent civilization. That means that it spawns numerous other civilizations. It sets the proto. It says, this is how you do it. Y'all learn from me, sit at my knee. I'm going to teach you what a civilization is, okay? So Sumer is the parent civilization. The Sumerians call themselves the black-headed people. When my early researches in the early 1980s in particular, I really studied Sumer religiously. And I did a lot of research. The physical anthropology suggests clearly black people. Even the Old Testament says, and Cush begat Nimrod, Cush being Nubia, Ethiopia, and HAPI. And Cush begat Nimrod, and Nimrod began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter unto the Lord, and he went forth into the land of Shinar. That's surely Sumer. So Sumer is one of them. And then the next big one is the Indus Valley civilization, sometimes called the Harappan civilization. Now, this was overrun by the people called Aryans in the second millennium BC. The same time you have the Hyksos overrun Kemet, you also have the fall of the Sumerians, and you have the fall of the black people who developed the Indus Valley civilization. They are what we might call Proto-Dravidian. Okay, and then you have the Shang dynasty and the dynasties of China. You can find a black presence all over there. But maybe the one that I love the most in my own way is Southeast Asia. And there you have a kingdom in Thailand called the Varati Kingdom. And then you have Angkor in Cambodia, Angkor Wat, Angkor Thom, not Uncle Tom, Angkor Thom. And then you have the Cham civilization in Vietnam. And these are some of the what I might call the classic civilizations of Asia, and black folk had something to do with all of them.
Wow. And what year was Sumer? When did he move there? I mean, like when did the civilization begin?
The civilization of Sumer began about 2800 BC.
2800.
So if we were to compare that with the chronology of Kemet, this would have been just before the step pyramid of King Djoser in Dynasty 3. As a matter of fact, yeah, Kemet is older now.
Yeah.
Especially if you look at pre-dynastic Kemet. But there are people who have suggested a connection. And I don't doubt that a colony from the Nile Valley went into Sumer and had a lot to do with the development of Sumerian civilization. And the reason I stopped at that point is because in Sumer you have monuments called ziggurats, and they kind of look like the step pyramid of Djoser, the one that Imhotep designed. And so some people have suggested that there was a link based on that And this, of course, biblical proverb, and Cush begat Nimrod, and Nimrod went forth into the land of Shinar, which was surely Sumer.
Okay. All right. That's good. Okay. So now, wait, you know what? Okay, wait. We got to go back before I go to the next question.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm trying to figure out like where everything, you know, like in terms of just what was happening all at the same time. Okay.
What do you mean?
So, you know, because you're talking about the third, like around the third dynasty.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So then you have this stuff happening to the south of Kemet. You know what I'm saying? Like in terms.
Yeah, it's a pity we don't have a map. The next time I come on, I'm going to have some maps, because that way we can look at exactly what I'm talking about. I used to teach a class on Friday nights, and I want to go back to it. In fact, to be honest with you, either in January or February, I want to return to the Nile Valley in terms of the Zoom presentations. And what I'd like to do is 4 consecutive sessions, maybe 4 Friday nights or something. And in that process, show exactly 1,000 original photographs from Kemet, from the museums, the tombs, and start all the way from the pre-dynastic period and work all the way down to the kingdom of Meroe, and just illustrate each dynasty with the photographs I've collected in my life, some that I've never shown before.
Oh, you got to do that. That's like Black History Month, or you can start January off with that.
But what we could do, if we had a few people, is we could develop a chronology. We could develop a timeline. We could put like Nile Valley on the bottom, Sumer on top of that, Indus Valley on top of that, China, Greece, Rome, Olmec, and show what Black people were doing in each of these civilizations at a particular, what a learning tool that would be.
Absolutely, because I'm sitting here, I'm listening to you're talking about this, and I'm like, okay, but what was going on over here at the same time? Yeah. And I'm thinking about what you were talking about last month, and I'm like, well, what was going on at this time? So
Alicia, one of the things that is special about you, among the many things, if you don't mind me saying, that is special about you, is that you have a passion for this. You have a love and an excitement about our history and knowledge of self. That's the key. How do we inject that level of excitement in our community so that we want to know about our history? We get pumped up about it. There's a joy. How do we take that and bottle it? Everybody's talking about vaccines now and injecting folks. How do we inject our people with the something that makes us want to know? Can't sleep at night unless I find out these facts, unless I share this information. If we could do that, I guarantee you we're 95% on the road down, because then we're going to want to be with a Black person. Then we're going to want to spend money with a Black person. Then we're going to see our values. Then we're going to put those guns down and stop shooting at one another, stop using the N word, and stop using the B word unless it's beautiful and brave and brilliant when it comes to Black women. Once you have knowledge of self, then you have the roadmap.
Yeah.
You have the foundation. And so I love your excitement. So how do we spread that?
I'm telling you this, oh my God. It's like when you're looking at something, I'm side-eyeing everything I'm seeing. I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty sure that didn't come from where they're saying it came from. Just in everything, in the architect. And, I live in New York. I'm in the architecture. Even like I live in New York City. There's a lot of stuff going on. But I sometimes when I'm walking down the street, I was like, I wonder what the Black person was doing at this same time. Because I know we were everywhere. But we're just in things we don't even realize that we're looking at, thinking that they're Eurocentric, but they're literally Black. It's from Black.
No. For the most part, our story has not been told.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because we haven't told it.
Yeah.
And we can say we've been lied to, we've been bamboozled, we've been all those things. But now let's do it. Let's tell our story from our perspective, without stammering, stuttering, whispering, and most of all, without apologizing for it. Let's stop waiting for other people to give us their permission and their stamp of approval and say, y'all can do it now. It's on us. And if we don't do it, whose fault is that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's why, you know what, you're doing it. And that's why we're on the
We're
bus.
doing it.
Yeah, we're doing it. We're on the
And the
bus
feeling is
together.
mutual. We got a mutual love.
Yes. Yes, we do. All right. So going back to the I just want to so one of the things, you know, I was thinking about because you're talking about you know, you're just making a correlation with Kemet in terms of like the Neteru. And I don't know how to pronounce this word. Is it Anukai? Anukai?
Anunnaki.
Anunnaki. Okay. So first tell everybody what that is or who that is and what it is. And then,
Anunnaki have become popular, I think, through the writings, particularly, I think of a guy named Graham Hancock. And they're associated with Sumer. And I suppose that some people see them as the deities of Sumer. I'm not sure. What we do know is this, is that Anu, A-N-U, was a name associated or found in all the earliest African civilizations. You hear about the Anu in ancient Libya, in Egypt, in India, and certainly the oldest, most exalted deity in Sumer was called Anu, A-N-U. And so that's essentially all we really know. I think when people talk about the Anunnaki, it's another fantasy that people are running with. I think that the root of it is this. We have been taught that Africa is so messed up that we look for other things outside of Africa. We look for extraterrestrials. We're talking about the Aboriginals or the indigenous people of America who didn't have anything to do with slavery. They were always here. I think that we have been so embedded that Africa is messed up that we find bits and pieces of almost anything to cling to rather than going to the African source. So when people start talking about the Anunnaki, I more or less dismiss them and tell them basically, get back with me in another year or two when you come to your senses and you want to talk about real history. Let's talk about historical stuff. Anyway, I might have gotten carried away there.
No, you know what? No, I mean, you're the authority on this.
Somebody's gonna be mad. I'm not an authority on anything, but I've studied a lot. But I don't claim to be an authority or an expert on anything. African proverb goes, only fools know everything. And I'm quick to say, as I get older, I don't know. It's interesting. I'd like to know, but don't claim knowledge and allow people to grow. You know, I miss Ivan Van Sertima. I miss Chancellor Williams, but I don't agree with everything they said. I don't agree with everything they wrote. And I think that they would have evolved. Even my early writings on the African presence in Asia began around 1981. I've been doing this for a long time. But if I were to go back and look at my earliest work, I would say things, Runoko, maybe that wasn't correct. Or that needs to be revised, or it needs to be nuanced. We need to allow people to grow and evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And check it out. One of the things, that's what Dr. Ben used to say. The great Joseph Ben Jacobin. He used to say, don't take my word for it, check it out.
Yeah.
I think that we are so hungry and thirsty for knowledge of self that when someone comes from an authoritarian, a scholarly position, when they look impressive and sound like they know what they're talking about, a lot of us will take that information without really critically analyzing it. But we all make mistakes. So I encourage people to be a good student, be a critical thinker, and check it out. Don't just take what Runoko Rashidi says or Anthony Browder says or the great Leonard Jeffries or anybody. As great as they are, do some research. Follow up, and then add to it and supplement.
I was about to say, you know what? Absolutely. I was about to say is we have to add to it. You know, because, you know, and I think about, you know, just from the beginning of time, we've been adding to it, you know, so this is all of our, you know, our adding to, you know, our rich history. Wow. Okay. All right. See, I can just talk to you forever. All right.
No, I would like that. Let's talk forever.
Let's talk forever.
Who cares about this thing called time?
We don't need time. You know, we're in a pandemic. We're just going to be sitting here.
Of course.
So now when we think of ancient Iraq and Iran, were the Assyrians, the Babylonians, or the Persian blacks, or were they descendants of Africa, of Africans?
Well, in a sense, everybody's a descendant of Africa. But if you're asking me if the Assyrians, the Persians, and the Babylonians were black, I would say no. I would now you see, and I'll show some this weekend. You see images from the art where they have, a lot of them have really curly hair, and I'm not sure what that's about. But another thing I learned from Dr. Van Sertima is you need something to corroborate that. For example, there are no eyewitness accounts of people who saw the Assyrians and says, and this was a black man and he had such and such a features and he was so tall. There's no eyewitness accounts. There's no linguistic evidence that would tie them to other African civilizations. There's no physical anthropology. They've dug up the bones and nobody can say these bones are similar to the people of Ghana or the Nile Valley. And so, no, I don't think so. But I think that they were influenced by black people. In the same way, look at us. I speak English. I don't speak an African language except a few words. My diet, in large measure, is based on European diet. The clothes I wear are largely European, but I'm not a European. It's just that I've come under a kind of a European cultural dominance. And so if you were to lighten my skin, delete my melanin, you might think that I was a European by my clothes, by my language, by the way I conduct myself, etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think that Africa set the tone, and those black civilizations in Asia set the tone for fashion and style and governance and conduct and all of those things. And so we see things that were perhaps influenced, even the hairstyles, by the ancient Sumerians, but certainly they interacted with black people. And they may well have been black people in the world of the Assyrians or the Babylonians or the Persians. But to say, or to ask the question, were the Persians black? Were the Babylonians black? Were the Assyrians black? I would say without hesitation, no.
Okay. Yeah, we had Robin Walker on last week. Yeah.
Great man. Great stuff.
Yes. And, he said the same thing about you. He said the same thing about you. But yeah,
he was absolutely correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But he has a very, methodical way of looking at, how things are, before we can start saying some stuff, we got to look at it in these things. If, just like you said, if we can't say, say these things without certain, then we can't really say that those things happen. It's not hearsay.
Well, Robin is a very precise scholar.
Oh, he's very precise. Oh my God, he's very precise.
Ivan Van Sertima was precise. What do I mean by that? Let me give an example, and this makes a lot of people mad. Ivan never believed. See, Ivan would talk about the African presence. He wouldn't say the African origins. In other words, it's easier to show an African. We'll use the Olmec as an example. This is what people get mad. Ivan Van Sertima never believed that the Olmec civilization was African. Be clear on that. He never believed that. He believed that at a certain point in time, a group of elite Africans came to the Olmec and turned it out. There weren't many of them. The Olmec nation wasn't a black nation, but some black people came over at a certain point in time and said, this is how you do it. And as a result of that, those Africans were given an exalted status.
Yeah, that's
what I mean. That's precision.
Yeah,
and it's easier to argue that than it is to say that the Olmec as a people or nation were black. And that's the kind of scholar Robin is, and that's what I try to be on my best days.
Yeah. I mean, but that sounds black. You come into a place and turning it out. That sounds black. So we definitely know. Yep.
But in Asia is a little different though, because I think that the Olmec, that the Sumer, well, anyway, a lot of it is guesswork. But I really think that the Sumerians were an African colony in the Tigris-Euphrates River Valley. And over a period of time, they were assaulted, they were attacked, they were absorbed, and they were blended in. I really wish, there's so many things we could cover, where I could actually read some of my passages. There's a ancient, I guess we call it a book, called The Lamentations of the Blackheads of Sumer. And it talks about the Sumerians, how they were being attacked and annihilated, and the brutalities that they suffered by these invaders. And over a period of time, they were just absorbed. And it's like that in many ancient civilizations. What happens to these ancient civilizations? Sometimes, like people, they get older and they wither and decay. And this Lamentations of the Blackheads of Ur, of Sumer, talks about how they were invaded and how they were wiped out. And it ends up by saying, over the Blackheads of Sumer, the winds swept. It's like reading about the Trail of Tears or massacres that Native Americans suffered, these great, ancient, beautiful people, and how Europeans ultimately came and annihilated them and took their land away from them. Well, the same thing happened to a lot of our sisters and brothers in Asia. Black people were the first people in Asia, and they built the first civilizations in Asia, but they were overrun by other populations that came much later.
You know, since you're speaking about this, can you tell us about the Khmer Empire? Am I pronouncing it right?
It's Khmer.
Khmer.
The Khmers were a people in Cambodia.
Okay.
And about
we need
1,400 years ago, yeah, we do. We're in Southeast Asia now.
Okay.
We're bordered by Vietnam and Thailand. And north of it is China. So we're in Southeast Asia. Cambodia is a country now. And at one point in time, they had a civilization there called Angkor. Angkor is what we call the classical civilization of Cambodia. It's like in the Nile Valley, given in Africa. And the people that built Angkor civilization were called Khmers. And they were clearly black people. And they built these magnificent temples, the greatest of which is called Angkor Wat. I think a lot of people have seen Angkor Wat. And they had a city called Angkor Thom. I always tell people it's not Uncle Tom, it's Angkor Thom. And this is like 700 years ago. And it's magnificent. And these are my favorite temples outside of the Nile Valley. They really are magnificent.
You're going to show them?
The Khmers were very special. And of course, I'll show them this weekend. The Khmer also sounds very similar to Kemet. And so some people would make an automatic connection, Khmer, Kemet, and it may be, but I'm not a linguist, so I can't say with certainty.
Okay. And when was this empire like established? Or when did it start?
Times. Every time I talk to you, I'm gonna give you dates.
You know who got me on these times is that darn Taiki. You know, because when he's talking to you, he talks in times. Everything is times, and so that's where I get it from. So now it's like when people are telling me, I say, "Wait,
no, that's good. Times. That's good." You know? The Angkorian civilization, we'll call it, began, I believe, in 832, and it fell around 1430. So it lasted about 600 years. And then you have another civilization in Vietnam around the same time. This is the people called the Cham. And the Cham and the Khmers, they kind of fought for domination. And ultimately, and then you had an earlier kingdom in Thailand where you have these magnificent images of the Buddha. So at this point in time, it would seem as though there was a series of black kingdoms in Southeast Asia. And they were eventually overrun. And who were they overrun by? The Chinese. The Chinese populations in China apparently grew to such an extent, or perhaps they were wars, they were driven by the Mongols who were attacking China, that they pushed south. And the Chinese eventually absorbed those ancient black civilizations there. So that if you look at the people today, the dominant people in Vietnam, they are the descendants of those ancient Chinese type folk that pushed down and more or less put black civilization in Southeast Asia to an end. And so now you have the remnants of those black folk, but they are very small minority groups. I remember growing up, I'm 66. I grew up in large measure in the 60s and 70s. And I had friends of mine and relatives that were in Vietnam. And they would come and say, I met these black people over there. You had these little black people in Vietnam. Those are the descendants, I'm sure, of the people that built the civilization called Angkor and the civilization called the Cham. They are their living descendants. Of that, I'm convinced.
Wow. So where did the Chinese come from? Where were they at? You know what I'm saying? Like where were they at? And how was there enough of them to come down and take them out? or
Well,
to absorb them?
It would seem like these black people went into Asia,
Mm-hmm.
and over a period of time, they kind of morphed into what we call the Asians of today. Same thing in Europe. You seem to have a different phenomenon. This is what I believe. This is what Sheikh Anta Diop seemed to believe, that you have Africans who go into Europe and morph into what we call white people today. And you had a similar phenomenon that took place in Asia. So that over a period of time, those original black people were just kind of absorbed or wiped out. I would say the same thing happened in the Americas, that black people, the children of Africa, are the first people to set foot on the shores of America, what we call the Western Hemisphere. But eventually, other populations came in such large measures that those original black populations were either wiped out or absorbed. And the same thing happened, I'm sure, in Asia. But those are excellent questions that we need to address, that we need to try and answer. Another thing about the African presence in Asia, now that China is so big in Africa, we need to examine our historical relationships with them. What has been the historical relationship of black people with, or Africans with Chinese? It didn't just start with this new movement of Chinese into Africa. There's a historical relationship with that. And the Chinese need to know that.
Yeah, I was about to think, I was just here thinking, I was like, I don't think they know that. You know, I was like, I don't think they know that.
I don't know if they want to know it. Now, I went to China. China I only went to one time. And that was enough for me, although I'm ready to go back. I went over there in search of the African presence. I had written about it. I had seen documentation for it. I had seen images of it. Not a single Chinese scholar would fess up and say there had ever been any black people in China. I said, okay, what about the Africans in China? Never been any. I think Africans in China have been the victim of what we might call ethnic cleansing today. But there's no doubt there's a history of black people in China, and also a history of black people impacting Chinese classical civilizations as well. Same thing for Japan. You might be able to find the same thing in Korea. You can find black people among the Mongols. You have black people in the forefront of Islam. You have it is said that the grandfather, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a black man. He was a Sharif of Mecca, and he apparently had 10 black sons. One of them is Abdallah, the father of the Prophet. In the early days of Islam, when things were not going well with the Muslims in Mecca, Muhammad sent his closest companions across the Red Sea into Ethiopia, into Africa. He was told, if you look to Ethiopia, there you will find a land ruled by a king under whom no man is persecuted. It is a land where God will bring you rest from all of your afflictions. And when those Muslims finally went back to Mecca, when things have been stabilized, the prophet is supposed to have said, he was so impressed, he who brings a black man or black woman into his house brings the blessings of God there. Muhammad's closest companion is Bilal, an Ethiopian who was persecuted for his faith. Muhammad is supposed to have told Bilal once, Bilal, last night I dreamed that I went to paradise and I found that you had been there before me. Bilal wasn't the first person to call the faithful to prayer. He is referred to as a third of the faith of Islam. And these are all just portions of the African presence in Asia. If we took it a step further, you can look at the Revolt of the Zans. This is the largest rebellion of enslaved people in history. Africans were captured and taken to southern Iraq later on, long after the Sumerians. They were forced into brutal enslavement. And they rose up on 3 occasions from the 7th to the 9th century. They had 3 massive insurrections. And the biggest of them is called the Revolt of the Blacks or the Revolt of the Zans. It lasted for 15 years. Wow. These sisters and brothers built their own capital city. Some of them were never defeated. They marched on Baghdad. It is the largest revolt of enslaved people in history, and it was by Africans, bigger than the Haitian Revolution, bigger than the revolt of Spartacus in Rome. All that's a part of our history in the African presence in Asia, and we need to know it. Yeah.
I can't wait till Friday. Oh, this will be good. Okay, so now, let's talk about the pyramid in Cambodia and the one that's in Guatemala in terms of like the similarities between those two.
Well, first, we might ask ourselves, what is a pyramid? I saw something on Facebook today, some pyramids in the Caribbean, a whole series of pyramids. That's what it was supposed to be. So I think we have to ask ourselves, what is a pyramid? Now, if we look at the Nile Valley, pyramid is a large structure leading, I guess, to a kind of a peak or kind of cone or something, triangle shape. Mm-hmm. And it has, it's used as a tomb. It's used as a burial place for a king or a queen, or in Kemet, in Nubia, someone of high status. You know that you have pyramids in Sudan, in Meroe, that weren't for kings and queens. It was just for people of importance and rank. Yeah. What I see in Cambodia, those are not really pyramids. Those are buildings with a kind of a pyramidal shape.
Okay.
They weren't tombs because the people of Angkor used cremation. So they were definitely not burial places. That's one of the reasons we don't know much about the physical anthropology of the people of Khmer because, of Angkor, because they cremated rather than buried them. Now, the ones in Guatemala, particularly Tikal, are usually identified as pyramids, but even those are not tombs. Those are used for religious rituals. And so I don't know if there's any real connection between Cambodia, Angkor, the Khmers, and Guatemala and those Mayan structures that people call pyramids.
Okay. All right, we're going to take kind of like a little break, just for some little housekeeping stuff.
All
and
right.
Let me put your, tell everybody, listen, this is just, remember, this is a teaser, guys. Come on, get your tickets. I'm going to be there. My kids, my godson, everyone's going to be tuned in. It's going to be really exciting this Friday. It's the first hour and a half, and then Saturday morning is the other hour and a half. And also, I want to thank you guys in the super chat. I saw everyone's name coming up. I was like, this is really nice. I was like, but it was, the conversation was getting too good. But I want to thank everyone who was hitting us up on the super chat. I see Ken Ward. Thank you. Thank you. DM. Thank you. And, I saw the comment about when we were talking about making the timeline. And yes, we have to get Enoch Hankerson. If y'all know who he is, just go to go onto Facebook and look him up because he is the chronological man. So just look him up. He makes beautiful chronological like banners. They're beautiful. But I would also in the super chat want to thank Comedic HAPI Prosperity. Yay! Thank you, thank you, thank you. I feel like there was one other person. I'm just looking. Okay, maybe that wasn't. But I want to thank everybody for contributing to our super chat. That's what's up. It's going to help us be able to keep doing this work, that we're doing, and and getting more assistant, with just be able to get some stuff done. All right, we have a screening this the first day of Kwanzaa, December 26th. Make sure if you have not, I'm telling you, if you haven't gotten your tickets, if you haven't seen this film, I don't know what's going on. Everybody should have saw this film by now. It is great. This is a good way to start Kwanzaa because the first day is Umoja, and that is unity. And this is what, this film, our film is about cooperative economics. It's about all of us working together. It's about a lot of different things. It's about economics. It's about our political power, our cultural power. And so it's very important that we, support this film. And because by you guys supporting it, we all win. Because once we can all get onto the same frequency, in terms of our thinking of each other, then it's nothing going to be able to stop us at this point. All right. Okay, I'm just going to wait for Dr. Rashidi. He has to get some more water because let me tell you, this weekend is going to be fire.
No, okay. I'm good. I was actually looking for a passage in Chancellor Williams' Destruction of Black Civilization, but I couldn't find it. So I'll save it for the weekend. But one thing I do want to say is that to me, it's very, very, I get a lot of recognition and I love it. I appreciate it. But I think it's so important to acknowledge those that have come before us.
Yeah.
Those great African scholars and those freedom fighters who made it possible for us to be here. And because of their legacy, we're able to do what we do. That's a big deal to me. Yeah. And so I was just looking for a passage in this great book, and I couldn't find it. But just again to reiterate, that was the book that really turned me out as far as scholarly research and pointed me to the African presence in the East.
Yeah. You're right. There's no way that that we could have made HAPI without our elders. Like there's just no way. It's like the counselor of elders. I'm taking a Madhu Netra class, and Infudishi talks about that all the time, about the counselor of elders, and then about scribes, and about people like the experts, and then it's the scribes, and it's like a whole like construct in terms of getting information out to our people. But yes, so now the Israelites, and you touched about it. You showed a picture before, but where did the Israelites come from?
When you say the Israelites, exactly who are you talking about?
So I'm talking about, and not like the people. Well, okay, wait. What about the people on 125th Street? Those are the Hebrew Israelites, right?
I don't know. I haven't been on 125th Street in a while. No, I don't know who's on 125th Street. I haven't been there in a while. I live in sunny Southern California, but I don't want to speak for them. I think that you do have, I'll say this nice diplomatic, scholarly way to put it. You do have a series of different groups of Black folk who have lived in what is now Israel or associated with it. You have, for example, in ancient times, maybe 12,000 years ago, and this comes from the work of another racist physical anthropologist named Sir Arthur Keith. And he wrote about a people called the Natufians, who apparently lived in what is now Palestine 12 to 14,000 years ago. And they're called the Shukbah people, Shukbah. And then you have the Black folk that I showed you earlier, the ones who were living in the region at the time of basically the 25th dynasty in Kemet, about 700 BC. Okay. The greatest figure in that dynasty is a man named Taharqa. Yeah. And Taharqa was the greatest ruler of an empire that stretched from Khartoum to Jerusalem. And so the people that I showed you would have looked, that's what they look like around 700 BC. Okay. And then you have Black folk who have come to the region as a result of the Hajj, the pilgrimage. Black people from Africa visited Mecca in ancient times and Israel in ancient times, and some of them stayed there. They never went back to Mali or whatever. And so and then of course you have the Hebrew Israelites in Dimona. And so you have a whole series of Black people who have lived in Israel or been associated with Israel. Then you have the Beta Israel, the sisters and brothers also called Falashas, taken from Ethiopia. And they were taken to Israel in the 1970s and 1980s. They were airlifted from Ethiopia. Dr. Ben apparently was related to the Beta Israel or Falasha. And so when it comes to the Israelites, and I ask you exactly what do you mean, is because there's a whole series of Black people associated with Israel historically and even in modern times.
I would never think about that. I mean, I would never think that. Now, when you look at Israel, when people talk about Israel, I wouldn't even think of that.
Because
Black people being there.
What are called the invisible people, the ones you don't see for the most part on television. And we could do the same thing. We could go to Iraq and Iran and Turkey and the Arabian Peninsula and Kuwait and Oman and Israel and Palestine and Syria and Lebanon and find Black people in all those countries right now. And for the most part, they are in bad shape. Somebody asks, a brother that interviews me from time to time, and every time he interviews me, he asks me the same thing, because we're talking about a global African. He says, Runoko, is there any way in the world where Black people are not oppressed? Anywhere where we can say Black people are not on the bottom, and I really can't even find a place, even in Africa. So if we were to go today to Iran or Iraq or Turkey or Pakistan, Black people are on the bottom of the totem pole. Mm. And we need to look at that as well. Nobody, to my knowledge, has ever studied Pan-Africanism. Now, Garvey is my man. Garvey talked about Black people all over the world, even in India. But I'm not even sure if Marcus Garvey talked about the Black people in the so-called Middle East. Now, interestingly enough, after the election of Barack Obama, a group of Black people in southern Iraq made big news. And they said, we need an Obama. We are black people who lived in Iraq for more than 1,000 years, and we are oppressed. And a lot of that oppression has to do with our race. And so when we look at Asia today, we also have to look at black folk and the deplorable conditions that they live in.
Yeah. Absolutely. What about the African presence in Asian religion, in Asian religion? Is there an African presence in Asian religion?
No doubt about it. Another one of our greats who lived in New York for a long time, a man named John G. Jackson, wrote a book called Christianity Before Christ, A World's 16 Crucified Saviors. Another book was published with the same name in 1875 by a man named Percy Graves. And in there, one of the chapters is devoted to the Buddha, but another one, in my opinion, more important, is devoted to Krishna. And the story of Krishna is almost identical to the story of Asar or Osiris. He is born of a virgin birth. He is assassinated when he is 33. Christ is crucified when he's 33. Krishna is a cowherd. Christ is a shepherd. And so there's my mind that the story of Krishna, one of the most important deities in Hinduism, is directly linked to Asar and the spread of African people in Asia. There's the story, of course, of the Osirian drama. And in the Osirian drama, just to cut to the chase, after Asar civilizes Egypt, he comes from Ethiopia after he civilizes Egypt, he goes and civilizes the rest of the world, according to the story. People like Diodorus Siculus and Plutarch, et cetera, et cetera. And Aset is left in charge, and that really pissed his brother Set off. But that's another story for another time. Yeah. Now, Asar, apparently, the tradition links him with ancient India. And so it's not surprising that the story of Krishna and Asar are so similar. And then you have the female deity, the prominent female deity in Hinduism, and that is Kali, who is always portrayed as black. She may be similar to Aset or Night. She is a fertility figure, but she's also a warrior goddess. She's a goddess of destruction. She's a sister you don't want to make mad. Okay.
So what's her name again?
Her name is Kali, K-A-L-I.
K-L. Okay.
So we can spend all night just with Buddhism, but I've already talked a little bit about the African background to Islam. The Prophet himself apparently had African ancestry. Some people would say there's a relationship between the Kaaba sanctuary and Kaaba, the soul and spirit, in Nile Valley in HAPI.
Yes, the dance, the spirit of.
And then, of course, if you look at the early images of the Buddha, you're straight up looking at a black man. And so whether it be the religion, the mythology, the history, the culture, the art, the music, can't get away from black folk in Asia either.
Yeah. So now, who are some of the black people that's in Asia today?
Well, I've already talked a little bit about these small black populations in southern Iran and Iraq. I personally interacted with black people in Turkey who are there as a result of being taken there during the time of the Ottoman Empire. I've met sisters and brothers in the Gulf, like, for example, Oman. Oman was a place where a lot of Africans were taken from the island of Zanzibar, and it was a transit point for captured Africans to other parts of Asia. So you see black people there. And then you have these little black people in places like the Philippines, in Malaysia, in Thailand. They're the descendants of the original African populations. You have black folk like that in the Indian Ocean. But when I think about black people in Asia today, the real core of them are the black people in India, who mostly live in southern India. And a lot of them are what we call today Dalits or untouchables. And they are developing a rapidly expanding African consciousness. The most progressive of their organizations is the Dalit Panthers, who named themselves directly after the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense in the United States. And these are personal friends of mine. These are people that I know in India right now. And so all of this is just almost uncharted territory. So my dream is not just, when we say black people need to unite, which I'm all for, I'm talking about all black folk.
Absolutely.
I'm not just talking about the black people in Africa, and I'm talking about black all over the world.
Yes.
Indigenous Australia, Pacific Islanders, Black folk in India. That's my dream of a global Black empire upon which the sun will never set.
Yeah, because we need each other. Like in these places, we need we need each other. So one of the things I want to ask you about was martial arts. Okay, everyone practices martial arts. Is there any connection to the African presence in martial arts?
I'm not sure. Last week I did an interview with this brother about a martial artist who recently made his transition, a brother named Kalindi Ayi. Apparently he was a real bad brother. And he wrote an article in the first edition of African Presence in Early Asia that I edited. And it was basically on the African origins of Asian martial arts. But what I've concluded, and the problem was he wasn't very specific. I think that all people have martial arts, like all people have music. All people have dance. All people have cuisine. That's part of human culture. And it doesn't have to be any relationship. And so to talk about the African roots of martial arts, I think you have to find a specific case, karate, jiu-jitsu. But there are people who are studying that, and they can talk about a Black influence, but I think that needs to be fleshed out.
Yeah. You know, like I know Wushu. My family studies Wushu, and it's one of the first, Asian martial arts. And so I'm always, I took a class with Infudishi, and I was like, some of the movements he was doing and some of the movements that I've been practicing over here. I'm like, wait, I wonder which one of these came first, because I don't think they came together because they're so similar, So I'm just, I want to kind of just get some more clarity about that. Okay. Well, I don't have any more questions.
Well, let me say one thing in closing. And maybe this is the most important lesson, is that Black people have never been invisible. We've never been a small part of the world. We've had tremendous influence and impact from the beginning of time, that Africa is the mother continent, and Africa is the gift that is always given the rest of the world. It's just that a lot of us have been unable to identify that. And so now we want to see Africa and African people and the African presence in Asia in a different light. We want to see it like a star, a dazzling sun that blazed across the horizon, that we have the greatest story that's barely been told, and it's up to us to tell it. And I know that the ancestors have picked us to help tell that story. So it's always an honor to be on your show. It's always an honor to be associated with you. And I know I speak for a whole lot of us who love you and appreciate you. And, we're in it together. We all we got.
Yeah. Let me tell you, you go to that Instagram, so you got to come on over to Instagram.
Yeah, you got to show me how to do that.
You got a lot of love. Yeah, you got a lot of love on Instagram. Your stuff is posted almost every day. People have all types of pictures of you, and I'm like, wait, where does this picture come from? Like, it's beautiful.
Well, people can always reach me. I do have an Instagram account, although I rarely use it. But a person can always.
I tag you all the time.
Well, we have to talk about that. Just like I had to be talked into StreamYard and Zoom and stuff. But I was going to say, you can go to my website, drrunoko.com, or you can just email me. Now you got it at the bottom, runoko@hotmail.com, and we can continue our conversation.
Yes. So everybody, listen, if you have not signed up, just go, like Dr. Runoko said, you can just go to Eventbrite, and he's the only Runoko on there doing it.
Yeah.
So it's easy. So his stuff will just come up. Go there, get a ticket, get a ticket for somebody in a different household, and sit down. There's a young little sister girl, little Shiloh. And I love it. Yes, Shiloh sits there with her dad, and she asks questions at the end. And let me tell you, see, this is when we talk about joining the HAPI movement. And one of the tenements are to teach the youth the truth. This right here. And I was saying this before, like Dr. Rashidi has done all the hard work in terms of laying out a curriculum for a year. All you have to do is pay the money and show up. And once you start going, it changes it literally changes the DNA in your mind. I don't even know if that's possible, but it changes the DNA. It just changes the way you start looking at things. And literally you start looking at things through African eyes. You're like, oh, wait, we did this. Oh, we did this. And you start making connections. And this is how we begin, to feel better about ourselves and then better, better about each other. So it's very important. Just go right there. Eventbrite, Runoko. He has his contact information right there. Sign up. It's going to be this weekend, this Friday, from 8 to 9:30, and then Saturday from 11 to 12:30. And I'm going to be there. I hope I see you guys that are in the chat. But it's always so nice, Dr. Rashidi. It's so nice to hang out with you. Yes,
we have to make it a regular date.
Okay? We got to make it a regular date. Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, my sister.
All right.
Thank you now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, guys. So listen, if you haven't, signed up for, or if you haven't seen HAPI, you got to check out HAPI. We have another screening the first day of Kwanzaa, December 26th. But if you can't wait, if you're just like, you know what, I can't wait till the 26th. I need to see this film right now. You can go to the website. You can get the DVD. And then when you're on the website, we got brand new Nubia. We have Nubia merchandise. Okay. We also have, there's a film that Taki did called Nubia. We also have some Nubia t-shirts. So you want to definitely check it out and check out the HAPI t-shirts that I have on that I have on right now. But also, sign up for the newsletter. So we have a newsletter that's now we brought another young person on, and they're going to be doing an article for this newsletter that we send out every month. Go to hapifilm.com, just put your get connected and put your information on there so you can get that that newsletter. And in the newsletter, we have, HAPI updates, but we also have like a little financial 101. We take usually a couple of Black businesses and we talk about them. We have a health piece, a economic innovator, people who have laid the foundation, like Dr. Rashidi was talking about, that's laid the foundation before we've gotten here. We have a piece about a piece about them. So it's very important to just get connected. And also, it's very important for you to go and subscribe and like this video. Send it everywhere. Because it's very important that we support people who are doing the work so that we all benefit. And so I want to thank everybody. And I don't know if you guys noticed in the chat, did you guys notice that we have a new opener? That's our official 10K opener. So we want to thank Tahuti Films. Tahuti Films is also the dope production company that did the film. They're the ones that shot it. And so you definitely want to, check out Seed's website, tahutifilms.com, and, check out all his stuff. But he did our new little opener. And I know there's always something I'm always forgetting to say. But hopefully you guys will just sign up and we will be letting you know who we're going to have next week. And I just a quick little shout out in the chat. I see Christina Williams from the D. It's like Detroit be showing up and showing out. Aisha Muhammad, Latoya Shelton. It's like everybody's in there. In here, pseudo charlatans, Jonathan Wright. One person I didn't see, we always got to look out as for our elder, John Henry Staples. He's always, on here. So when we don't see him, we have to check in on him. But and Underdog Music. And I want to also thank everyone who who sent me clips for our 10K. And we're going to be showing those all throughout the week. Just like wishing us congratulations with making it 10K. So I am going to close out. I want to show if just in case you guys missed it, because you got to look at this dope. This is like the dope beginning of our HAPI Talks. So we're legit now. We have the HAPI Talks, opener. So thank you guys. I love all of you guys, and I will see you next week.
I don't know what we can talk about in this nation without talking about white superiority, honestly.
Who defines the meaning of God also defines the relationship between economy and God.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community?